At 9:23 in the morning, on November 4th, 2025, the Combat Information Center aboard the USS Princeton was shrouded in silence. Only the faint heartbeat of the SPY-1D radar pulsed through the air. A contact had just broken formation, 200 kilometers to the west, accelerating from 18 to 30 knots in less than 90 seconds. The computer identified it as a Chinese Type 052 Delta destroyer, the Zhongchang, charging straight toward the Nimitz carrier strike group. No alarms yet. The men and women in that dim room moved with a familiar rhythm. The rhythm of professionals who had trained their entire careers for this moment. On the digital map, the South China Sea glowed with countless traces of traffic, oil tankers, cargo ships, and a faint blue circle marking the boundary of American protection. 46 merchant vessels were transiting within 50 nautical miles, their safety depending on the calm, silent confidence of the United States Navy. Outside, sunlight washed across Princeton's gray armor, but inside, the air remained cool and steady. A young operator whispered a target update. The combat officer confirmed it. The captain listened, then issued his order, his voice calm, touched with a trace of curiosity. Let us see just how far they are willing to embarrass themselves. It was not arrogance, it was experience. Every movement aboard the cruiser carried intention. Where others might see confrontation, the Americans saw a live-fire classroom. By 9:26, target classification was complete, threat level moderate to high. The Cooperative Engagement Capability Network lit up, linking the Princeton with the USS Chung-hoon, USS Kidd, and the distant USS Nimitz. Through the NIFC-CA system, radar, sonar, and satellite imagery merged into a single real-time canvas stretching for hundreds of miles. A destroyer rushing forward was no longer a mystery, it was merely geometry. Data flowed silently, through encrypted fiber optic lines, an electronic ballet faster than any shouted command. Each Allied vessel now saw the same blinking icon, the same trajectory, the same countdown to potential contact. The American formation adjusted its heading by only fractions of a degree. No panic, no noise, only absolute precision. In a world addicted to noise, the professional calm of the United States fleet was the loudest declaration of all. That morning's lesson had begun, to dominate through discipline, to command through wisdom. At 9:35 in the morning, from an altitude of 25,000 feet, the E-2 Delta Hawkeye early warning aircraft circling above the strike group detected the first signals from the north. Dozens of radar returns flared across the screen, fighter jets rapidly climbing from the deck of China's Shandong aircraft carrier. Their transponders declared their identity, J-15, the pride of Beijing, the so-called Flying Sharks. Inside the Combat Information Center aboard the USS Princeton, data flowed seamlessly. The NIFC-CA network fused the Hawkeye's signals with the ship's onboard sensors, turning scattered dots into a unified tactical picture. The Americans did not shout. They simply and quietly adjusted the variables. On the surface operations display, another element appeared, a low-frequency sonar signal, coarse, rhythmic, and uneven. The ANSQQ-89 system instantly recognized the familiar acoustic pattern, a Type 039 diesel-electric submarine, roughly 80 nautical miles away. Its sound signature was so loud that a sonar technician joked, "It sounds like a cargo ship trying to swim." The Chinese were attempting a multi-domain show of force, pressing from the sea, the air, and beneath the waves against the American formation. To outsiders, it might have looked like a coordinated operation. But to the seasoned eyes of naval professionals, it was merely noise masquerading as strategy. The Princeton's captain ordered a quiet update to Task Group 70. Multiple contacts forming. Maintain defensive posture. Overhead, a P-8 Alpha Poseidon from Kadena, already on patrol, deployed a network of sonar buoys through the thermal layer, feeding acoustic data directly into the same system. The Americans had achieved full domain control before China could even finish launching its aircraft. On the deck of the Shandong, steam and jet exhaust, mixed with the harsh clang of ski jump takeoffs, without catapults. Each J-15 had to sacrifice payload and fuel just to get airborne. By the time they reached cruising altitude, their fuel clocks were already ticking down. Far below, the merchant ships continued on their courses, unaware that peace at sea now hung suspended by invisible electronic threads. The difference between crisis and composure is not measured in the number of missiles, but in professionalism, and the United States possessed both. At 9:37 in the morning, the flight deck of the USS Nimitz erupted in a storm of controlled thunder. Steam curled in the sunlight as the first FA-18 Echo Super Hornet of VFA, 14 top hatters roared off Catapult 1. 45 seconds later came the second, then the third. From above, the scene did not resemble a prelude to battle, but a ballet of absolute precision, every movement rehearsed to the thousandth of a second. Yellow-shirted deck crews signaled, catapult officers saluted, and jet blast deflectors rose like armored wings. Among the sequence of launches were two EA-18 Golf Growlers, their wings glinting with ALQ-99 electronic warfare pods, alongside two MQ-25 Stingray drones ascending autonomously to their assigned altitude. It was these unmanned refueling aircraft that extended the carrier's reach far beyond the horizon, sustaining the air patrol's endurance and freeing human pilots for the battle ahead. Inside the combat ready room, pilots reviewed their threat displays. The ANAPG-79 AESA radar swept the sky with razor-thin beams, tracking dozens of contacts simultaneously. Data from one aircraft was instantly shared with the entire squadron through Link 16, forming a digital formation no adversary could rival. To them, the sky was alive, color-coded, pulsating, updated with every heartbeat. Across the ocean, China's J-15 fighters were wrestling with the limits of physics itself. Their mechanical radar systems swept back and forth like searchlights, revealing their own positions more than detecting enemies. Without a secure data link, coordination relied on shouted radio commands and uncertain guesswork. They were flying through an information storm without a map. Within the American strike group, calm reigned. No cheering, no boasting, only the quiet composure of professionalism, and the belief that preparation, not provocation, wins wars. From the bridge to the hangar bay, every sailor could feel it. This was not a show of force. It was a message only professionals could understand. To control the process is to control the battle. At 9:43 in the morning, inside the Combat Information Center of the Princeton, a new wave of data arrived from the north. The RC-135 rivet joint, a modified Boeing 707 flying high above the clouds, had intercepted communications in Mandarin. Translators relayed the words through headsets in real time, requesting permission to harass United States vessels. That single sentence said everything. The pilots were not improvising. They were waiting for political authorization, while already within combat range. By the time Beijing approved anything, the situation could have changed 3 times. Dark Star confirms multiple uplinks. Shandong Air Wing is blind, reported the signals officer. The captain nodded. Understood. Let's make it a little darker. Moments later, the EA-18 Golf Growlers took their positions and opened their electronic umbrellas. The ALQ-99 pods began to hum a silent weapon, flooding the spectrum with ghostly echoes. On Chinese radar screens, 4 Super Hornets multiplied into 12, then 20. Targets merged, vanished, and reappeared in impossible places. Aboard the Princeton, the ship's SEWIP Block 3 system joined the dance, integrating seamlessly with the Growlers. Together they wove an electromagnetic fog so dense that the enemy's fire control radar could no longer tell what was real and what was illusion. On the large displays of the Combat Information Center, American symbols remained sharp and blue. The red ones flickered and faded. The United States formation had effectively disappeared from China's targeting solutions, while maintaining a perfect picture of its own. In modern naval warfare, information is ammunition, and at that hour, the Americans possessed it all. The crew worked with quiet focus. They understood the paradox of power. The stronger the shield, the less one needs to draw the sword. Above them, invisible waves bent, scattered, and folded upon themselves a ballet of physics choreographed by decades of experience. The real battle had already been decided. No one outside the electromagnetic spectrum would ever see it. 9 giờ 47 phút sáng. Trên một bàn điều khiển của Princeton, một ký hiệu bỗng ngừng di chuyển. Radar Type 346A trên tàu khu trục 52D của Trung Quốc đã dừng chế độ quét góc rộng và tập trung vào một chùm tia hẹp một khóa mục tiêu hỏa lực. At 9:47 in the morning, on a control console aboard the Princeton, a track suddenly stopped moving. The Type 346A radar on the Chinese Type 052D destroyer had halted its wide sweep and focused into a narrow beam, a fire control lock. In electronic terms, that was the action of pointing a loaded gun, and its aiming reticle was centered squarely on the USS Nimitz. No one on the American side panicked. The crew had drilled this scenario hundreds of times. Procedure demanded absolute silence until confirmation. Then the comm report came through. Lock confirmed. Duration, 10 seconds and counting. The captain replied calmly, almost conversationally. Maintain posture. Activate full defensive matrix. Hold fire. Deep inside the hull, the vertical launch system stood silent, awaiting orders. 122 tubes loaded with SM-6 and SM-2 interceptors, each capable of shooting down airborne missiles or striking surface targets. The fire control computer continuously calculated every option in real time. Through the NIFC-CA network, Princeton, Chung-hoon, and Kidd shared identical targeting data. If one ship fired, all could provide guidance. To the enemy, that meant that even if they destroyed one American ship, the others would still complete the mission before their missiles hit the water. 30 seconds passed. Everyone in the Combat Information Center felt the weight of each tick of the clock. When the Chinese radar finally broke the lock, a collective relieved exhale swept the room. "Lock lost," reported the tactical officer. "Copy," the captain responded. "Record it. Save the entire signal spectrum." He turned slightly to his executive officer and said, "They wanted to see if we would flinch. We did not." No cheering. Only the low murmur of analysts logging frequencies, modulation types, and pulse cycles. Each byte of that data was priceless intelligence for the next encounter. Restraint once again prevailed over aggression. The destroyer out there may have thought it sent a warning. In truth, it just exposed the entire playbook of its tactics. At 9:51 in the morning, the South China Sea was so flat it deceived the eye, like a sheet of molten silver under the early Sunday. But beneath that smooth surface, a silent drama was unfolding. The sonar technicians aboard the USS Princeton leaned over their consoles, headsets pressed tight, listening to the ocean's language, a world of metallic echoes and whispering vortices underwater. Contact bearing 159, range 15,000 yards. Target just raised a snorkel, the report came. The acoustic signature matched perfectly. A Type 039 diesel-electric submarine, noisy, clumsy, and now fully exposed. In the dim sonar room, a petty officer smiled quietly. "He is snoring like a merchant ship, sir." The ANSQQ-89 system had tracked this submarine for nearly an hour. Its sound pattern was unmistakable, the faltering cadence of a propeller of a vessel trying to be silent while recharging its batteries. The Chinese captain may have believed he was invisible. He was wrong. Every movement he made was being recorded, time-stamped, and located to the meter. In another navy, this might have been the moment to strike. A RUM-139 ASROC anti-submarine rocket ready to turn that noise into a funeral beneath the waves. But the Americans had a different objective. This was not a hunt, it was a demonstration. The Princeton captain gave a short order: "Do not engage, continue tracking." On the tactical display, concentric sonar rings overlapped like ripples on the water, each ring fed by satellites, sonar buoys from a P-8A Poseidon, and the silent vigilance of a nearby Virginia-class submarine. The message needed no words, but was etched clear as steel: "We see everything." The Type 039 unwittingly crept on, its periscope just breaching the surface. The Americans did not move. They did not need to. Every vibration of its hull, every breath of the deep had become part of a growing data set. the acoustic DNA of an entire submarine fleet. And in the end, the true weapon was not missiles or torpedoes. It was knowledge, the thing that lets you win a war before it begins. At 14:30 in the afternoon, the sea was calm again, but the air above the USS Nimitz vibrated with controlled fury. Yellow-shirted sailors moved like living clockwork along the 1,000-foot flight deck, executing the largest coordinated launch the Pacific had seen in years. 48 aircraft thundered into the sky. Super Hornets armed with long-range anti-ship missiles, LRASM, Growlers carrying gleaming ALQ-99 jamming pods, E-2 Delta Hawkeyes climbing high to weave a digital network overhead, and MQ-25 Stingrays, gliding silently behind like mechanical angels of endurance. From the Chinese perspective, it was perfect chaos. Their radar screens turned into abstract art colors, bleeding, targets multiplying, the horizon itself melting away. The Growlers flooded every frequency with jamming waves, while the SEWIP Block 3 system aboard the Princeton sharpened the haze even further. On American displays, the picture remained crystal clear. On Chinese screens, it was nothing but a storm of phantoms. Then the ocean itself spoke. 6 nautical miles from the Shandong, a Virginia-class submarine broke the surface, erupting in a white column of spray. For 90 seconds, it stood proudly amid the waves, its black hull gleaming under the afternoon sun, an illusion of silent power. Through binoculars, Chinese sailors on deck stared in disbelief. Some even raised their phones to take pictures. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the submarine slipped quietly back beneath the surface, leaving only ripples and the echo of humiliation. No missiles were fired. No collisions occurred. No casualties were taken. Only a single message remained. We control every domain you think is yours. That act was the pinnacle of psychological warfare carried out without words, without a single shot fired. For the Americans, it was the highest form of deterrence, the display of strength through discipline. Above, the returning Hornets formed a radiant halo around the strike group. To anyone watching from space, the sight no longer resembled a fleet, but a single living organism, the visible will of a nation. At 16:23 in the afternoon, the Chinese formation turned north. Not long after, Chinese state media announced that the exercise was complete. On the American side, the mission log was closed, aircraft secured, and the carrier deck returned to its familiar rhythm. The hum of machinery, the steady hiss of steam, and the unwavering heartbeat of a fleet that never sleeps. They had not fired a single shot, and they had never needed to. This was not a story about victory, but about credibility, about proving that presence, professionalism, and precision remain the ultimate weapons of peace. For every merchant ship passing through those waters, and every ally watching from afar, the message was unmistakably clear. Freedom of navigation is not a slogan. It is a commitment upheld by those willing to stand guard. In war, strength is proven through destruction. In peace, it is proven through restraint. The South China Sea shimmered beneath the dying sunset, and for a brief moment, the horizon belonged entirely to silence, a silence that only absolute power could create. As night fell upon the carrier strike group, one truth still echoed. The sea remains free, because there are still those who guard it.